So please welcome our next trio with tales to tell. First of all, Senior Lecturer in Leeds University's Institute of Transport Studies and leader of the Empower Consortium, Professor Susan Grant-Muller. Consultant Geriatrician at Odense University Hospital, Associate Professor at the University of Southern Denmark and Country Leader for the SHARE project, Karen Andersen-Ranberg. And the Director General of the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova, Charlotte Brogren. And it is slightly off topic, okay, way off, but I can't help but notice we now have a Dane and a Swede on our panel. And today happens to be the exact anniversary of the Battle of Lund in 1676, when Sweden repelled an invading Danish army, around 9,000 casualties, making it one of the bloodiest battles in European history in terms of the percentage of those who died. And I'm told by Ulla from Lund University, who I had dinner with last night, that apparently this is right around here was where the battle took place as well. So Karen, Charlotte, no reenactments, please.
We promise you.
I'm half French.
Right, oh, the half French. Well, I'm not sure if that helps. Right, okay. But I'm aware there's still some not always friendly rivalry between the two, fueled by Zlatan Ibrahimovic's remarks about seeing the entire Danish nation into retirement after their Euro 2016 playoff. But I think battles on the pitch rather than pitch battles is a sort of sign of the progress we've made in Europe, changes for the positive. So is the Lund Declaration, which cannot be held directly responsible for that, but is the Lund Declaration also making positive changes? If we're going to assess its impact, I think it helps to start by being clear about what it's impacting on. So I'll get each in turn to explain. And if we can start with Empower, Susan Grant-Muller, it's about moving us where we want to be, but also moving us away from the type of vehicles we're getting there in.
Yes, that's correct. So Empower is a project, it's a transport research project essentially, and it's about reducing the use of conventionally fueled vehicles for travel and transport. It's a research and innovation project that started in May of this year. So we're one of the very first research programs to come through H2020, which is a huge privilege, but a huge challenge as well. And as part of this, we're using positive incentives for individuals to help them to reconsider the transport choices that they make and to consider the use of alternative modes to those that draw on conventional fuels. So in this sense, although we haven't earmarked transport as a grant challenge, transport does contribute to the big challenges around carbon, peak oil, health and so on. And in fact, it's something that impacts on all of us.
Yeah, I mean, all these things interrelate.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And how, I mean, it's obviously we can't do parallel universe stuff, but what difference do you think the Lund Declaration made to all this? I mean, wouldn't something sort of similar probably have been happening anyway, you could argue?
Actually, I doubt it.
Right.
I doubt it. So I'm willing to say that, yes, I think that Lund did make a difference. I think that the difference started to filter through, though, at the back end of FP7. And we saw some influence there in terms of the kinds of projects that were being funded. And I think certainly for myself, there was a forerunner to Empower called Sunset, which was very much out there and at the forefront in terms of being very, very innovative in drawing together people from a mixture of disciplines. So there were transportation scientists, there was myself as a statistician, we had ICT suppliers, people who programmed apps and did software, we had economists and so on. And that really was, proved the way forward. It was a much smaller project, but it did prove the concept that these multidisciplinary teams can work together and can really be very, very powerful in the way that we were hearing about this morning. So within Empower, again, we've got a very multidisciplinary team working on this. We've also introduced aspects of the research and specialists in business modelling and organisational embedding, and this is very much part of that impact agenda, which I think was coming through from the Lund agreement, is something that we've talked about a lot today as well. So understanding how business models work within the transport sector and getting different actors to work together in supplying transport, in supplying incentives to induce and encourage behavioural change as a theoretical academic concept, but the outworking of that in our 11 cities that we're going to actually have implementation. I think that this is something that definitely we wouldn't have seen before. So it has, I think that Lund did have a huge impact on us.
I kind of hoped you'd say that. Okay, Karen Andersen-Ranberg, can you share a bit about SHARE? It stands for Survey of Health, Aging and Retirement in Europe.
Yes, it's an aging survey because we know that that is one of the most one of the biggest societal challenges we will have just in a very few years. We will have a double of very old people in just 30 years from now, so that will have huge impact both on economy, on societies, on the family networks, and also on health, because people, normally older people get the disease rather than the young ones, so it will have an impact also on health services in the countries.
And it's a particular thing that's worth saying, although obviously it affects populations across the world. In Europe, it's out of sync with pretty much everywhere.
In the Western industrialized country, not only in Europe, actually also in Japan and the United States and all the westernized industrialized countries. That is why also SHARE is aligned to the survey on health and retirement in the US, to the JSTAR in Japan. We have similar studies in Korea and Brazil also, because they're all facing the same problem or challenge, we should call it, in the future. And it's important for me to stress that we are also including health. It doesn't say so in this description on the flip side of the paper here you have, but we actually do, and that is very important to stress, that we also do some objective measurements. So we test people during the personal interviews. We test their cognitive functions. We test their mental health, depressive symptoms. We do physical tests also, and in the last wave we collected biological samples by doing dry blood spots from finger pricks, which is the first time ever this has been done in this way in a population-based public health survey, you could say, with all the other instruments also in it. So it's an important study. And it has been going on since 2004, so before the first Lund meeting. And we started out being not only cross-disciplinary, but also cross-European. So we have had this. This is part of the whole idea of working together. And we have free access to all the data. They are being released to the public scientific world whenever they are ready from each wave. And it's important to know also that this is a panel. So we follow each individual every other year. This is what makes it very interesting also from a scientific epidemiological lookout. But it's also a challenge because it's much more difficult to follow a person and to keep that person in the panel instead of just taking some new samples and make cross-sectional surveys.
This is proper longitudinal work, yeah.
It is, and it's the best scientific method you can use if you want to understand aging, because aging is a process in time, and you need to know what is the hen and what is the egg.
And bringing us back to the question of Lund 2009, though, you said you were going before then, so again, what difference has it made a significant difference to the acceptance, the involvement, the reaction to what?
Here, I'm negative.
Right. That's good.
Sorry to say so, because
the
EU was very generous to fund the first 3 waves. That means 2004, 6, and 8. But since then, it has been up to the member states to fund the national surveys. And I know that it has been very difficult in many countries. And some countries has had to leave. For example, right now, the Netherlands, which is a rich country, has not been engaged in the wave 6. It's more understandable that Greece left us after 2008.
They've had 1 or 2 things on their mind,
yeah. So, but the Netherlands and I know Sweden now got funded, but they had struggles also, and France. I can name a lot of them, and to speak of my own country, but we were saved in the last minute. So, but it is a constant problem of getting funded, and I know that the PI of this survey last year had 43 funding bodies funding the share survey, also for the general or the core management of the whole survey.
Charlotte Brogren, I read on the Vinnova website just the other day that I saw a press release saying you're moving towards a challenge-driven strategy. So what is that, and what does that mean you're moving away from?
I wouldn't say that we are moving to. We are already in that strategy, based on the Lund Declaration. Vinnova is the Swedish Innovation Agency, and at Vinnova we like action. We don't like to talk a lot. We like to do things. So
slightly worrying when you're on a panel, but yes.
Inspire. Yeah. I will keep calm here for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Inspired by the Lund Declaration and also by other studies coming from OECD, and we said that we have to look upon how we fund, how we organize and set up programs that will make more sense in the future, that will deliver better result and also foster new type of collaborations. So in 2011, we started a program on a natural basis that we call the Challenge-Driven Innovation Program. We had the broad interview rounds with key stakeholders in Sweden to identify some 4 topics that has to do with sustainable, attractive cities, competitive production, healthcare for the future, and the future information society. Since then, we have invested more than 100 million euros in this program. We have some plus 100 projects running, involving more than 1,200 different stakeholders, generating extremely nice results, driving scientific forefront, involving on a much broader base new stakeholders into R&D and innovation processes, as well as getting research results out from the labs into the real world.
And how have all the stakeholders responded to this shift? Because I noticed, again on the website, it says Swedish industry has been forced to move up the value chain and embrace innovation, entrepreneurship and collaboration, which makes it sound like they've been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Well, I think that that statement holds for industry wherever they are all over the world. That also holds for most parts of society. If we don't,
I was going to ask if it applies to academia as well.
If we don't, absolutely. If we don't move forward, there will be others moving ahead of us. No, I think that when we said that we are going to go for a more challenge-driven approach, setting up our programs, that generated a lot of challenges within the agency. We had to set up our processes quite differently. We also had to help and initiate, mobilize the actors outside, involving key stakeholders that hadn't been part of innovation processes before. It also required that the way we are interacting with the projects along the development time also had to change. And that has changed a lot, how we work, with whom we work, how we fund the projects. But now, 4 years down the road, I could definitely say that have improved the quality and had led to much more spread of important knowledge across society in a way that we haven't seen before.
But sticking with your kind of Swedish Elvis Presley inspired, a little less talk, a little more action approach to things, do you think it's better if we actually don't spend, there is a tendency sometimes to talk and talk and talk, it's better to go out there and do something and then adapt it?
But we can talk today and go home and do something to Monday.
Right. Or maybe Saturday, let's make it busy.
Not?
Karen, you have an advantage if you're talking about ageing across Europe, that it's something that people immediately relate to already. That's a positive. You don't have to convince them or talk them round to it. But do you also encounter these problems that we've been talking about in earlier sessions about operational inertia, about large groups coming together? You've already said that about people coming out, falling in and out of this.
Well, are you talking about the respondents or the researchers?
I'm talking about the researchers.
Okay, the researchers, it's a great thing. Right. And that is what I really like about it. It has become a kind of family, because I've been around since 2002, more than 10 years. And people tend to stay on, at least the more senior partners. So young people come in, young scientists come in, and then they leave, or they use the data for doing their PhD. So it's a huge network and still a family going on. And somehow it also a very strong factor for me to continue despite the troubles we have had and the challenges. It has been a night and day, and the whole family involved in
it's
share.
A functional family rather than a dysfunctional family.
Yeah, it is. I would say so.
Any tips for that we can take from this, because it's about practical experiences that we can say on how to make these kind of things work?
Sometimes I say, well, off quote, I say, well, you should have a German as a PI.
Good.
Because they run the things, and it works.
Right. Okay.
A Swede could do it too.
Yeah. You see, no Danish-Swedish tension there as well. Susan, I noticed on your website you call yourself a statistician with a research niche in transport technologies and social informatics. So are you the kind of multidisciplinary, policy-savvy individual who's well suited to the kind of funding landscape that we have today, whereas maybe perhaps some of your colleagues, they know about the thing they know about and that's it, and they struggle when they're dealing with some of these mechanisms?
Okay, well, Quentin, I'm reluctant to say that I'm the person who's got it all right, of course. But I think
this is not the time to be modest.
No, okay. I think that what has happened is that through getting it wrong, through trial, and just being because I'm a little bit of a risk taker, through being willing to try it, I think that we have shown, and myself as a PI has shown that it is possible to do this, to deliver this, to work across the disciplinary bounds, but also to start to work, and this is something else that's changed since the original Lund Declaration, to work more with really big stakeholders, industrial players, who actually have found it very difficult to find ways to engage with the European funding and research landscape previously, certainly in my experience. So even though we have success, and you're right that that it is possible to achieve success in this game, I think that there is still more to learn. And what we're learning about at the moment, what I'm learning about, is the difference between the way that the big stakeholders operate, their priorities, their timescales, which are often very short, their propensity towards risk, which is far less than my own as an academic and just me personally as a researcher and so on, and how to manage that and how to create forward momentum whereby both industry and academia and the other parts of the research team find a pathway forward. So we've still got challenges to go. We haven't finished learning about how to do this successfully, but I think that Lund has actually empowered us, if you'll forgive that pun, to move forward in that.
Didn't notice. That's
yeah,
fine,
thank
yeah.
you.
But I mean, basically what you're saying is, I mean, collaboration is a skill. It's not just
Yes,
an amalgamation of all these different things.
It is,
Absolutely,
yeah,
I
it
agree,
it is definitely a skill. And I also think, I just wanted to pick up something that was said this morning by our keynote speaker as well, about the funding of infrastructure that supports this kind of collaboration. And actually it was a very true comment that often there is a willingness to fund infrastructure around particular scientific infrastructures or very focused, dedicated kinds of facilities and so on. There's less of a willingness to fund infrastructure that is enables the cross-cutting stuff to happen. Empower has its home. It's a home rather in a new facility that we've got up at the University of Leeds, which is one of these big investments. It is a building. It's renovated. It has computing facilities for collaboration and so on. And it's actually the foresight of our national research councils being willing to take the risk and to recognise the value of this kind of research and to put money into that kind of infrastructure. I think that has enabled that, and I very much hope that that's something that goes forward as well, not just funding the research and saying yes, we'll put money behind these collaborative ventures, but behind the infrastructure that supports them and gives them longevity.
And there's also a tension there sometimes, of course, because when you get large accumulations, they tend to become more risk averse. You still got to keep an element of risk in there, even when you get collaborations.
Absolutely. I think risk, understanding, appreciating risk, and the challenge and the opportunity that it brings is very, very important. And I think that we need to pay attention to that.
Just briefly, because we're very nearly out of time, I presume you're saying because the project's only been going a short amount of time, it's too early to say that. You can say here are the impacts on your average European citizen or on mobility or whatever.
It's very, very difficult, yes. We started on the 1st of May, so just in terms of timescales, which we also talked about, we've got the letter to say that we've got the project end of January. The project kicked off 1st of May. We had our kick-off meeting the first week in May, so this has had a very steep ramp up. But yes, it absolutely is the case that it's too early to say, but we intend to influence directly or indirectly at least 1 million citizens. We've got rollout in 11 cities and contexts. We're looking at reductions in the KPIs, reductions in the use of conventionally fueled vehicles. We pay particular attention to the impacts of these kinds of transport schemes and initiatives on vulnerable groups with a very holistic view of what a vulnerable group is. And we're also interested in impacts in terms of citizens' accessibility to goods and services, because actually that's what transport's about. It's about getting people access to goods, services, education, social interaction.
Karen, we're none of us getting any younger, so what's the next steps for Share?
Continue if we get the funding for it. We want to have at least 20 years because we want to follow people from pre-retirement age into early retirement and people in early retirement into later retirement where we have all the problems with health. And we know a lot about morbidities and now we have the biological samples, so we can look into a lot of interesting things, and it's really, and we already have had enormous impact on
several. But there are huge cumulative benefits. If you stop now, then you're missing out on it and you'd have to start
again.
That's
the problem. This is an engine, you know, steam engine. Now we finally have the pressure to go on, but then the coal is running out.
Yeah. Susan could probably tell you about a different kind of engine that uses
yeah.
fuel that she can, she's trying to move you to alternative. And Vinova, if you've moved to this challenge-driven strategy, so is it just driving ahead further, faster?
No, we have to develop the ways we work all the time. And I think one of the key successes here is to work in a more stage-gate process where you, because this is really about finding this new teams. We have to appreciate that collaboration is not something that starts from day one. You have to learn how to do that. And that means that we have to be a little bit more flexible as you start, but as the project goes along, you can put tighter demands upon it. And that means that working in a more stage-gate process, where the demands gets tougher, as well as the funding, when the need for funding increases. I think that is something that we have learned a lot from in this program, and I think that is something that we can spread to more activities in Sweden as well as across Europe.
Okay, well, thank you for being our new team and responding to our tight challenges in terms of time. And we have to shut the doors on our showcase, but can we please thank Charlotte Brogren, Karen Andersen-Ranberg, and Susan Grant-Muller. And when I say move on, Susan, I mean obviously in a non-petrol-driven vehicle. Now, as all but the amnesiacs among you will recall, this morning we had Christian Naczinsky from Austria's Ministry for Science, Research and Economy pop up to give us a kind of brief attempt at a 5-minute summary. And even though somehow in his summary he didn't use my brilliant comparison between the Marvel's Avengers and the JPIs, we're still going to let him have another go at another 5-minute summary. Applause, please, for Christian Naczinsky.
No, fine. Thank you. All right. Quentin told me to be even quicker than 5 minutes, so I try to hurry up. I think a good starting point in this round of showcases was about commitment on 3 different levels. And we learned that in one of the cases, of course, funding from the EU side, FP7, Horizon 2020 was very important. But then at a certain point, member states have also come in. And Cher told us the example that it's sometimes very difficult in some member states to get the funding that is needed so that everyone can work together. And then, of course, also Vinova showed us that on the level of research funding organization, it's also important to show a very high level of commitment and develop strategies and adapt to a changing environment. And this example of the strategic changes within Vinova, of course, addresses exactly the societal challenges, the context that we were talking today. That's very important. But also through all these discussions, I think it came through that what is needed is excellent people who do that. We need infrastructures. Both of the examples, Empower and Share, highlighted that. We need free access to data for Share. It's very important. They mentioned that. So we are in the world of open science here as well. We need to have a very good science base, frontier research, people who know how to do it. We need to get the right skills of the people on the ground. Global cooperation was less of a topic this time, but also again in the context of share, it was mentioned that of course all, at least Western industrialized countries, but also Japan, Brazil, Korea, I think also China, face challenges around demographic change and an aging society. And when we come to the impact side, of course, it's very interesting that the examples in the afternoon here taught us a lesson of how we can observe cross-cutting impact, not just within the one field of transport or the one field of an aging society, but we have many spillover effects in other policy fields. And that's very, very important. Mobilizing the key stakeholders in this context, of course, well beyond our research arena is also important. My final remark is, and I think that was something new in the debate here, or was particularly emphasized here, is the notion of time. So I think it was in the context of the aging society, we need 20 years or more so that we observe really the effects and the impact over a long time. So for some of these challenges we are facing, we cannot expect, like we normally have in our funding circles, within 5, 6, 7 years to get the results that we need. Here we need really to have enough breadth and consider it a long wave. Thank you very much.
So thank you. He's not going anywhere because he's on our next panel, which we're convening to give blunt answers to a very blunt 5-word question. Did we get it right? Now we're going to get the views of several stakeholders, and since we're all effectively stakeholders in this, I'm hoping we'll hear from yourselves as well, unless you're inexplicably tongue-tied, which doesn't seem likely. So I'm going to get all 6 of our panel to each come up and each give their answer, maximum 5 minutes, preferably slightly less, to that "did we get it right" question. And since he's already up here, it seems only polite to start with Christian, who remains consistently from Austria's Ministry of Science, Research and Economy.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'd like to mention two examples where we think that we got it right, and then 2 examples where I think we got it wrong. The areas of success, I think, was that we developed a governmental research innovation strategy in 2011 already that is still in place for another couple of years. And in this strategy, societal challenges became a main pillar of that strategy, and I think that was also in reaction to the first Lund conference, and also, of course, in the light of the early joint programming process. It was well ahead of the Horizon 2020 negotiations already, but I think that was very good. We were also quite successful to mobilize key stakeholders, at least within our research innovation arena in Austria. Austria took an active role in some of the joint program initiatives. You saw it also that we are part of this first group of countries. We dedicate several million euro per year into transnational calls, so I think that is also an important part of it. And we attracted enough political attention, I think, in this process. Now, coming quickly to 2 areas where we have some homework to do. I think the first one is that we underestimated the transaction costs of collaboration within the research community around societal challenges. It does not just come by chance that people meet and work together in these fields. Although we expected that everyone knows everyone and works together. So what we now do is that we support networking platforms at the moment in 4 pilot areas, starting in 2016. And later we will, if it's successful, grow it up to 10 platforms with 100,000 euro per year, just to co-finance the transaction cost of collaboration around dedicated societal challenges. Now, the second failure, I think, in the system so far was that we did not manage to foster a systemic interaction between actors, like I call it, in the overall societal challenges value cycle. So on the supply side, what we need to do is to foster collaboration and contact between researchers on the one hand and innovators on the other hand, to develop the appropriate and necessary products and services. So this is something we have really to continue and increase our efforts. But even more so on the demand side, so that to bring researchers and innovators together with those who are in charge of defining the terms of societal challenges and defining what they expect as possible solutions and how they should look like. So here come in regulators, public procurers, standardization offices, user organizations, parliament, politicians, etc. So all those who are not playing normally in our field, but are very important on the demand side to define what is expected from the side of society. So what we will do is we started to launch a pilot. So we selected out of the 10 JPIs one in our ministry and said we go for demographic change. And there we will test and demonstrate and try to demonstrate the benefits of long-term commitment along the whole value cycle of societal challenges. And we will bring together and create a web of actors and a web of activities that hopefully will lead to qualified scientific, technological, economic and societal impact. And for that, and I close with that, we finance an accompanying research project to measure the impact in the long term, and we will support kind of a change management process to support the change of culture, the change of mindset that is necessary, with about 200,000 euro per year just for this pilot. This is it. Thanks.